Well, you ought to know that I am the oldest and tallest of 4 sisters, and that my sister Jennifer is number 3 in the birth order and the height. But she has recently clinched first place among us sisters in becoming a mother. Now, before you get some smart idea to come up to me and call me Mother Amber after this, just you should know, my children, that I am a good Protestant in the line of the Anglican tradition, and eschew Catholic nomenclature. Amber is preferred. Miss Amber or Miss Carswell is fine if you're of trick-or-treating age still. So Jennifer wins the Mother Award of us, and we're a very competitive family, so we'll let her have it. But last Thursday week, Jennifer bore unto us a daughter and named her Jolene. And we newly minted aunts followed the star to Kansas, arriving at the house by the time they were leaving the hospital. And there we were, finally in the nursery, passing around this 7 pounds, 2 ounces of perfect, swaddled pink flesh. And Jennifer watched us with her own particular joy and pride. But I noticed something that stirred behind her eyes. Something about her older sisters seemed now not quite so trustworthy, right? With her 2-day-old child wriggling in our arms, would we know what to do? Was the unspoken question. The aunts, for our part, felt it too, a moment of mingled joy and fear for us all, the elation at this miraculous little life and the uncertainty at the results of even our best loving intentions for her. Questions of, would we support her head correctly, escalating into, will we support her entire life correctly? Like, what if I'm holding her wrong, churned around until it became, what will happen if she gets into drugs someday and runs out on her family and lives under a bridge? It's a little extreme, this escalation, but you do know what I mean, don't you? And we hold both of these together all the time, don't we? This joy and this grief. And it's good that we do. Joy alone would make us reckless, saccharine. Grief alone would make us frozen in a hole of depression. But both together, our hearts are made larger only by holding joy and grief together. It's true. It's an expansive heart that can experience both of these in large and equal measure. I hope that Jolene learns this. Now, Jennifer was 9 years old and I was 17 when our grandmother died, having just turned 60. It was pancreatic cancer. The doctors had given her 6 months to live, and she died about right on time. She's one of those saints that I whisper when we pray for the dead here. So I'm not so good a Protestant after all. I do pray for the dead. It's a bit of a contentious point in Christian theology, depending on who you talk to about it. In the Episcopal Church, we've changed our minds on the practice. We didn't allow it, and it wasn't a part of our service until that newfangled revisionist prayer book of 1928. When I joined the church, though, it was one of the pieces that I took to immediately, having never heard of something like this. I took to it innately. I believe in the communion of saints, we say, a great cloud of witnesses who don't just live on in some vague sense in your heart, but really live on, beyond us, and among us somehow at the same time, interceding on our behalf. So our grandma, Jolene's great-grandmother, is the second person in my list of the saints. My grandma was not someone who might predictably be called a saint, by the way. She was an unwed teenage mother, had a few marriages, She did run out on her family for a moment in life, and I'm pretty certain she did some drugs in the 70s, though I don't think she ever slept under a bridge. One of her sons died, that unthinkable loss. But by the time she was grandma, by the time I knew her, all of that life of deep grief and great joy created this mysterious condition out of which comes, to general surprise, a saint. Now, what we mean by a saint in the church is someone who was a great sign of God in the world, making the invisible one tangible. Her house was full of these unpredictable signs of communion, of hymns played to God on her world-class Bose sound system with 5 CD changer. And we would sing, "When the mountain touches the valley, all the clouds are taught to fly, as our souls will leave this land most peacefully. Though our minds are filled with questions, and our hearts will understand when the river meets the sea." John Denver. She left for me all of these signs of the Word, overflowing shelves full of fantasy stories, The Wrinkle in Time and Narnia and Harry Potter series, fairy tales and myth that may not have taught me the verified catechism of the Holy Catholic Church, but shaped me indelibly, whispering to me of these deeper truths of sacrifice, courage, love, of this thing that I would eventually learn to call resurrection. Prayer was never meant to be magic, Mother said. Then why bother with it? Susie scowled. Because it's an act of love, Mother said. It's Madeline Lingle. It wouldn't be until I wandered into the church in my 20s, many years after my grandma's death, having never heard of an Episcopalian, that I would learn that she had been one, confirmed even, by one of the priests who lives in our very diocese here. A communion of saints, interceding on your behalf. Someone dropping signs for me. The invisible one made tangible. We baptized 2 little girls today, Addison and Charlotte. These daughters and granddaughters and nieces, whose miraculous little lives hold so much of our joy and our fear. Infant baptism, like prayers for the dead, isn't a uniformly agreed upon practice in Christianity. The argument against, as I'm sure everyone in the Bible Belt knows, is that we should wait until they can make an informed decision. And they will, one day, for or against what they've been given. Until then, we're telling them that they are fully in this communion of saints with us. And more than that, you and I, we're promising to guide their way by making signs of ourselves, that God might be visible to them by the lives we live. You are promising to make God believable to them by who you are. And the promises we will make on their behalf are our best intentions for them, trusting that where and when we cannot fulfill them, and later when they can and what we can't or won't fulfill them, that it is God's promise that cannot be lost. The signs before them will point the way. These acts of love are the things that last. It is right that these 2 things, the prayers for the saints, the prayers for our children, are together on this day. The grief and hope of life here in one. How large our hearts are becoming.